What if all we know about Jesus is only a fraction of the truth? What if behind the image of the crucified Master, there existed a consciousness that transcends Earth, a cosmic intelligence whose mission surpassed the boundaries of conventional history? Since the early centuries of the Christian era, Christ has been shrouded in layers of interpretations, dogmas, and symbolism that often limited the grandeur of his essence. However, forgotten records, hidden traditions, and ancestral knowledge reveal a bold possibility that Jesus was an emissary from the stars, a multidimensional being sent to reignite the dormant light in the human soul. Not just a spiritual leader, but a point of interconnection between the divine and the cosmic, between the visible worlds and civilizations beyond our comprehension. For centuries, the official narrative has told us about a man born in a manger who preached love and compassion and was killed by earthly powers. But there are glaring gaps in this story. Where was Jesus during his so-called lost years? What did he learn between the ages of 12 and 30, a period completely absent from the canonical Gospels? Ancient texts, such as the Gnostic Gospels and apocryphal manuscripts, point to a journey far beyond the borders of Nazareth and Jerusalem. They suggest that he traveled through Egypt, India, Tibet, and even more mysterious regions, not only in search of wisdom, but perhaps in contact with non-human intelligences, with advanced consciousnesses that shaped his mission on Earth. The very conception of Jesus is already wrapped in elements out of the ordinary. The virgin birth, announced by a star that guided wise men from the East, refers to phenomena that, in the light of modern science, could be interpreted as visits from extraterrestrial beings. In various ancient cultures, the emergence of divine avatars was preceded by celestial signs and interventions from the sky. Wouldn't it then be logical to consider that the birth of Christ fits into this same cosmic pattern? The Star of Bethlehem, for example, has already been associated with light ships, dimensional portals, and interplanetary appearances in various contemporary mystical interpretations. More than that, the title Christ was not a surname, but rather a spiritual designation. Christ means the Anointed One, the one who carries the activated divine spark. But what if this anointing was not just spiritual in origin, but also cosmic? In ancient esoteric traditions, there is the concept of Christ consciousness, a high frequency of universal understanding, accessed by beings who operate beyond human duality and limitation. Jesus, in this context, would be the embodiment of this supreme consciousness, manifesting on the physical plane to help humanity remember its stellar origin and its divine destiny. This perspective radically changes our relationship with the gospel. It ceases to be just a moral manual and becomes a vibrational code, a key to unlocking dormant memories in our spiritual DNA. Jesus, then, was not just teaching through words, but transmitting frequencies that resonated beyond rational understanding. His miracles, considered supernatural phenomena, could be seen as conscious manipulations of energy, matter, and space-time, natural abilities for interdimensional beings or galactic masters. Ancient civilizations have already reported the arrival of children of the stars, who descended to Earth during critical moments in human history to realign the paths of evolution. In the Andean world, Viracocha is spoken of. In India, Krishna and Rama. In Egypt, Osiris. All are associated with divine manifestations with knowledge and power that transcend human nature. Christ fits into this same archetype, rising beyond a specific religious figure to become a universal symbol of reconnection between heaven and earth, or rather, between earth and the cosmos. This cosmic reading of Christ, although not recognized by traditional religious institutions, is supported by mystical currents such as Gnosis, Theosophy, and the esoteric doctrines of the East. In many of these strands, Jesus is described as an avatar of light operating on multiple planes simultaneously, a being fully aware of his cosmic origin, whose mission was to plant seeds of spiritual ascension in a humanity immersed in the illusion of separation. He came to remind us that we are not merely flesh and bones, but rather eternal consciousnesses journeying through the universe. It's impossible to ignore that throughout the Bible, we find enigmatic clues about this transcendent aspect. The clouds that accompany Christ in his appearances, the angels who move freely between heaven and earth, the moments of bilocation and transfiguration, all elements that, reinterpreted under the stellar perspective, point to a being endowed with technologies and capabilities beyond our time. The very episode of the Ascension can be seen as the activation of a vehicle of light, a body of energy that breaks the boundaries of three-dimensionality and returns to its cosmic origin. Humanity has always sought answers to its origin and purpose. And perhaps in Jesus lies the key to an even broader truth, that we are part of a vast galactic family, guided by loving consciousnesses that respect our free will, but intervene at decisive moments to accelerate our evolution. In this scenario, Jesus would be the most well-known among many star emissaries who have walked among us, and who may be returning. This return, however, is not only through physical appearances. It happens within each human being who awakens to their spiritual nature and recognizes Christ as a living and pulsating energy in the universe. The cosmic gospel is a call to the heart, a reminder that we are not alone and that beyond the stars, there are brothers and sisters cheering for our expansion. Jesus did not come to establish religions, but to activate consciousness. And when we look at him with the eyes of the Spirit, we realize that his light comes from much farther than we can imagine. Therefore, as we open our understanding to this broader perspective, something begins to move within us. What was once a distant account comes to life, depth, and meaning. Christ ceases to be a figure frozen in time and becomes a timeless master, an intergalactic guide, a mirror of what we essentially are, cosmic beings with a grand destiny. With each breath, each reflection, we draw closer to this hidden truth. And perhaps, just perhaps, we are ready to receive this stellar gospel in its entirety. Before the first steps of Jesus touched the soil of Galilee, even before his name was whispered through the scriptures, a presence already hovered over the subtle fields of creation. The consciousness that animated Christ did not emerge in the linear time of Earth. It predates the stars, is older than the worlds, a living frequency that traverses galaxies, cosmic pulses, and hidden dimensions. By understanding this, we dismantle the limited image of a savior shaped exclusively by human doctrines. What we call Christ consciousness is a divine emanation that inhabits the highest levels of reality. It is the cosmic wisdom that holds the universe together, the spark of unconditional love that sustains the worlds and that, at specific moments in the universal journey, manifests in human form to remind the forgotten who they truly are. This consciousness does not belong exclusively to Jesus of Nazareth. It had already manifested itself at various points in time-space, under different names and forms, in cultures separated by oceans and millennia. Krishna in India, Quetzalcoatl among the Mayas, Buddha in the East, and other masters who touched the earth carried fragments of this same light. Jesus was the most accessible manifestation for the West, but not the only one. He embodied the Christ, not as a personal title, but as a state of being. This energy is universal, available to every soul that awakens, but when channeled by him, it reached a rare and unmatched purity. A vibration so high that it transformed not only his generation, but the ages that would come after. In the Gnostic records, found in Nag Hammadi and other sources suppressed by the ecclesiastical tradition, there are clear indications that Christ is not just a man, but an eternal principle that descended to unite with matter and open portals of light in the dense plane. The Gnostics spoke of Christ as an aeon, a being of pure emanation coming from the pleroma, the spiritual center of creation. In this understanding, Jesus did not just receive this consciousness, he already possessed it at his core, just waiting for the right moment to activate it in its fullness and guide humanity towards collective awakening. When we observe the universe, we find recurring patterns of symmetry, harmony, and order. These structures, which govern everything from the orbit of the planets to the composition of our DNA, are not random. They are expressions of the Christ consciousness in action, a loving intelligence that organizes, expands, and sustains all forms of life. Jesus, as a conscious manifestation of this force, naturally understood these universal laws. His teachings reflected this hidden wisdom. The kingdom of God is within you was not a metaphor, but a cosmic truth, indicating that the same energy that pulses in the stars also inhabits the human heart. The Christ within us is an invitation to return to the center, where there is no separation between the divine and the earthly. Throughout history, beings connected to this consciousness have been called avatars, guides, instructors of humanity. Many of them came from higher dimensional planes, others incarnated from star civilizations that have been observing our planet's evolutionary process for millennia. The Earth, in its hidden history, has been the stage for interdimensional missions led by consciousnesses operating in the name of cosmic harmony. Jesus was one of these beings, perhaps the most impactful for our era, sent to reverse the effects of cycles of forgetfulness, disconnection, and vibrational decline that threatened the course of human ascension. The esoteric tradition of the Essenes, which Jesus very likely was a part of, acknowledged this cosmic origin. Their light rituals, their practices of connection with the higher realms, and their secret records pointed to a lineage of masters who came from beyond Earth, guardians of the stellar wisdom. Jesus, placed in this context, was prepared from an early age to reactivate this cosmic memory within himself, not by imposition, but by natural resonance with his mission. The Christ consciousness was not something he learned, it was his true identity. In the Upanishads and the Vedas, we find descriptions of beings who cross the veil of matter to teach humans the truth about their eternal nature. In their words, the universe is expanding consciousness, and every form of life is an expression of this consciousness. These ideas perfectly echo in the teachings of Jesus when he spoke of oneness with the Father, love as the supreme force, forgiveness as liberation from mental prison. By uniting these teachings with ancient traditions, we realize that he did not come to create a new religion, but rather to remind us of a forgotten wisdom, preserved in different cultures, sealed in myths, temples, and hearts. When he says, "I am the way, the truth, and the life," he is not referring to an egotistical exclusivity, but to a frequency of consciousness. The I Am is a cosmic mantra used in various traditions, representing the divine presence within each being. Jesus spoke from this sacred center, where the ego dissolves and the soul remembers its origin. The way is the return to inner truth. The truth is the recognition of unity. The life is the continuous expansion of this consciousness. It is a universal language that was only clothed in religious forms due to the cultural needs of the time. In the early Christian tradition, not yet institutionalized, there was a much more symbolic and cosmic understanding of Jesus. His followers saw him as the bearer of the light of creation, as a being who walked among the worlds. Not coincidentally, in the catacombs and in the early Christian symbols, Christ was associated with the sun, the spiral, and the fish, all symbols with deep meanings linked to the cosmos, eternity, and the cycle of rebirth. Before religion appropriated his image, Jesus was revered as a master of the stars, a guide of consciousness, and a friend of the soul. This Christ consciousness remains alive. It is not confined to a body, a name, or a story. It manifests whenever a being awakens to unconditional love, inner wisdom, and compassionate service to life. By recognizing this force within us, we do what he himself said, "Greater works than these shall you do." This phrase is not just a promise, it is a password to access the Christ within us. It is the awakening code that is being activated now, in times of planetary transition, when Earth is preparing to regain its position among the awakened galactic civilizations. Jesus, therefore, is not the end point of divine revelation, but a starting point for a much deeper dive into our true cosmic identity. He is the bridge between worlds, the catalyst for a new era, and the living reminder that we came from the stars, to return to them, aware and transformed. By understanding this, we stop worshiping Christ as something external and start incorporating him as an active force that vibrates in every cell, in every choice, and in every act of love we perform. Long before the rise of modern empires, before history was written by the victors and the veils of forgetfulness closed over humanity, there was a time when the heavens openly communicated with Earth, a time when the connection between Earth's people and the stellar intelligences was clear, direct, and sacred. Ancient civilizations not only recognized the existence of beings from the stars, they lived in cooperation with them. Their monuments, calendars, rituals, and social structures were deeply rooted in the knowledge received from entities that came from the cosmos with the purpose of instructing, elevating, and guiding. These visitors were not gods in the mythological sense, but advanced consciousnesses that operated in harmony with universal laws. And many of these teachings, now lost, resonate with the principles taught by Jesus centuries later. Sumeria, considered the cradle of civilization, left undeniable records about celestial beings called Anunnaki. In ancient clay tablets, written in cuneiform, entities are described that descended from the heavens in flying ships, brought agricultural, astronomical, and spiritual knowledge, and interacted directly with humans. Far beyond the simplistic narrative of gods and men, these records suggest a direct coexistence between human civilizations and stellar intelligences. The Sumerians did not see these beings as myths, but as part of their everyday reality. The way they describe their origins, always pointing to the stars, reveals an already established cosmic consciousness. In Egypt, the gods were symbolic representations of cosmic archetypes. Isis, Osiris, Horus. All of them carry not only mythological stories, but deep spiritual codes, aligned with astral cycles and the architecture of the soul. The construction of the pyramids, which still defy modern science, follows patterns of stellar alignment, primarily with the stars of the Orion and Sirius constellations. This reveals that the Egyptians were in contact with celestial maps that required knowledge beyond empirical observation. They claimed that their kings and masters came from a land of the stars, and that the soul, upon leaving the body, returned to the cosmic dwelling. This connection with the stars was at the heart of their spirituality. The Mayan culture is also an impressive marker of stellar presence. Their calendars, incredibly accurate, predicted astronomical events millennia in advance. More than that, their cosmology spoke of interdimensional portals, cycles of eras, planetary transitions, and the return of solar beings. For the Mayans, Earth's history was part of a grand galactic drama where forces of light and shadow acted upon collective consciousness. Their temples and sculptures depicted beings in non-terrestrial attire, controlling flying machines and interacting with humans. They spoke of the coming of a great stellar instructor, a luminous figure who would once again bring the wisdom of the heavens to restore harmony on Earth, a surprising echo of the Christ archetype. Atlantis and Lemuria, civilizations now considered mythical by many, often appear in esoteric traditions as cradles of advanced wisdom. In these ancient times, humanity lived in deep communion with the star realms. Atlantis in particular is described as a society that achieved high levels of spiritual technology, where priest-scientists interacted with interdimensional consciousness and used crystals for communication with other stars. The fall of Atlantis, according to these traditions, was the result of the distorted use of this power, which caused an energy collapse and the loss of collective memories. However, the survivors of this era planted seeds of the lost knowledge in various parts of the world, Egypt, Central America, Tibet, and paved the way for the return of Christ consciousness. In all these cultures, there is a common thread. Spiritual knowledge was directly intertwined with cosmic understanding. The laws of the universe, sacred geometry, the cycles of time, the alchemy of the soul. All of this was part of the same body of knowledge passed on by beings not limited to earthly physicality. And it is precisely this knowledge that begins to reappear in Jesus' deepest teachings. When he spoke in parables about the kingdom of heaven, he was evoking subtle realities, dimensions that coexist with ours. When he healed with touch, with word, with intention, he accessed quantum fields of energy that ancient civilizations had already utilized. The tradition of the Essenes, who cultivated silence, purity, light-eating, meditation, and connection with the elements, was a direct continuation of these initiatory schools of the past. These men and women preserved fragments of stellar knowledge in their writings and practices, and it was among them that Jesus grew, studied, and prepared. He not only absorbed this knowledge, he transcended it, for his soul carried the very origin of all this. He was the incarnate source, the return of primal wisdom in human form, and for this reason, he spoke with authority, as someone who came from above and knew where he came from. Religious doctrines attempted to separate the worlds, the spiritual on one side, the material on the other, the sacred in heaven, the profane on earth. But the star civilizations taught integration. Everything is one. Everything is connected. Jesus resumed this unifying wisdom. He spoke of the Father as an immanent presence, which is in everyone and everything. He spoke of love as a creative frequency, of faith as a channel of manifestation. These are not just ethical teachings, they are technologies of the soul, used for millennia by advanced civilizations that vibrated in harmony with the whole. And if we observe with keen eyes, we will realize that the return of this knowledge is not in the future, it has already begun. It's in the hidden books that are now emerging, in the secret archives that are being revealed, in the sincere channelings that speak of star brothers, and in the reactivation of spiritual DNA that is beginning to awaken in thousands of people around the world. The presence of Jesus becomes more alive and more understood when viewed under this cosmic prism. He did not come just to save, he came to remind. He did not just bring comfort, he brought instruction. And he did not speak only to his generation, but to the entire human lineage that is moving towards a reunion with its galactic origins. Each ancient temple, each myth, each symbol carved in stone or woven into forgotten scrolls is a silent call to turn our eyes to the sky, but not as those who seek outside what is missing within. The stars are the mirror of what we carry in essence. And for this reason, Jesus said that we are the light of the world. Not because we should shine out of vanity, but because we come from the constellations of creation, from the primal source where everything is consciousness, everything is love, everything is eternal life. Between the hidden layers of history and spirituality lies a veiled truth that eludes traditional interpretations. Jesus did not emerge in isolation on the earthly stage, nor was his mission a divine improvisation in the face of humanity's moral decay. On the contrary, his coming was part of a cosmic plan orchestrated by intelligences operating beyond time and space. This plan was designed by consciousnesses of the highest hierarchy, belonging to a stellar fraternity known in various occult traditions as the Order of the Star, an interdimensional grouping of beings whose purpose is the preservation, activation, and elevation of the divine spark in emerging civilizations. Jesus was one of the brightest representatives of this order, incarnating not only as a master, but as a vibrational catalyst capable of altering the energetic matrix of an entire planet. The Order of the Star is not a myth created by esoteric romanticism. It appears under countless names in mystical traditions scattered throughout the world. In the Vedas, it is associated with the celestial rishis. In Egypt, with the netters who came from the firmament. In Kabbalah, with the Elohim and Seraphim who guide creation. In Rosicrucian and Theosophical traditions, it is known as the Great White Brotherhood, a cosmic council that guides the spiritual destiny of worlds. In all cases, its action is silent, discreet, yet profound. These beings do not impose their presence, they respect free will, but they intervene at moments when humanity reaches a critical point of rupture or possibility of ascension. Jesus was sent at this turning point, when the density of the human ego threatened to completely suffocate the connection with the higher self. This order operates on multiple levels: physical, etheric, astral, and higher mental. Its members are not just disembodied entities, but also beings incarnated on specific missions, known as Lightworkers, Starseeds, messengers of the Word. Jesus was one of them, a being who had already achieved full mastery before his incarnation and who agreed to pass through the veil of forgetfulness, assume a human body, and live all the challenges of duality to redeem, with his own presence, the path back to the source. His birth was not random. He was carefully prepared, accompanied by beings from higher spheres, anchored by planetary alignments and vibrationally connected to the consciousness of star civilizations that monitored his mission from invisible planes. Apocryphal accounts and esoteric records speak of lights that descended upon the place of his birth, of beings that were not human accompanying his childhood, of masters coming from the east, not only for wisdom, but for vibrational recognition. These magi knew that a unique consciousness had incarnated, a being whose vibration was like an explosion of light in the planet's energy grid. They belonged to initiatory schools that guarded fragments of Atlantean and Lemurian knowledge, passed down from generation to generation since the times of the Great Cataclysm. When they saw the star shine, they knew it was the sign. the return of the Master of the Ages, the reunion between heaven and earth. During his youth in the so-called hidden years, Jesus was not idle. He traveled to distant lands, studied with wise men from Egypt, masters from Tibet, Brahmins from India, and oracles from Greece. But more than learning, he was reactivating ancient memories that lay dormant within him. Each encounter, each teaching was a key unlocking his cosmic consciousness. He accessed Akashic records, communed with beings of light, and understood the laws of the universe not as theory, but as direct experience. His mission, although centered on Earth, was not restricted to the earthly plane. He received instructions from higher spheres, was visited in deep meditations by entities from the Order of the Star, and was preparing for the Great Act, anchoring the Christ consciousness in the heart of humanity. This consciousness is a collective vibrational field, a state of unity with the whole, of absolute compassion and unconditional service. For it to be activated en masse, it was necessary for a being to fully embody it on the physical plane. Jesus assumed this role. Through his life, his actions, his teachings, and above all, his energetic frequency, he radiated this field. Each of his words was a code, each gesture, a living geometry. That's why those who touched him were healed. Those who heard him were transformed. Those who looked into his eyes felt eternity. He was the living presence of the Order of the Star, acting through the flesh to realign the spirit of humanity. The Essenes with whom he lived were guardians of this wisdom. They knew of Jesus' mission even before his birth. They kept secret archives about cosmic cycles, about star beings, and about the return of the Master. Many of them came from lineages that traced back to the temples of Atlantis. Their practices were not mere religious rituals, but ways to calibrate the body, mind, and spirit to sustain high vibrations. They were the pillars that would support the necessary energy field for the mission of the incarnated Christ. And even after his departure, they were the ones who guarded the true teachings, many of which were hidden, distorted, or destroyed by earthly powers. The actions of the Order of the Star also manifested on subtle planes during the life of Jesus. At key moments of his mission, dimensional portals were opened. Beings of light observed the events and anchored higher energies. At the baptism by John, for example, there was such an intense vibrational descent that some present fainted. The dove that descended from the sky was not a poetic symbol, but a representation of a light ship, or an etheric projection of a being from the Order, marking the beginning of the full activation of Christ. The Transfiguration on the Mount was another moment when the veil between the worlds temporarily broke, allowing his disciples to see his true luminous form and interact with other members of the fraternity like Moses and Elijah, both also initiates of the same lineage. The crucifixion, far from being a failure or tragedy, was part of a profound plan of vibrational resonance. By surrendering his body, Jesus activated an energy matrix that would allow the Christ consciousness to spread across the planet. His blood, charged with light codes, fell upon the earth like a seal, anchoring the frequency of unconditional love in every inch of the soil. This event resonated not only in human history, but throughout the planetary grid. The Order of the Star was there, present in every dimension, supporting the energetic field necessary for this transcendental act to occur in harmony with the higher planes. And after the resurrection, which was the total reactivation of the body of light, Jesus completed his mission. He had reconfigured the planetary field, sowed the new consciousness, and left hidden instructions that would be decoded centuries later when humanity was ready to understand not a sacrificed Christ, but a galactic, timeless, eternal Christ. His ascension was not an escape, but the completion of a multidimensional journey. He returned to his origin, but left open the bridge between worlds. The Order of the Star remained active, silent, working behind the scenes of history, guiding other emissaries, preparing the ground for the great awakening that is now approaching. Recognizing Jesus as a galactic being does not diminish his greatness. On the contrary, it expands it. It reveals the magnitude of his mission, the complexity of his love, and the extent of his influence. He does not belong to one religion, culture, or era. He is an ambassador of the infinite, a fractal of the source that descended into density to reignite the forgotten flame. He is the living presence of the star order among us, and his call continues to resonate, not in words, but in vibration, inviting us to awaken the inner Christ and remember that we too are part of this cosmic fraternity. If the sacred books are read without the filters of dogmatic tradition and with eyes open to a multidimensional reality, it becomes impossible to ignore the constant presence of entities operating beyond human limits. The Bible, in both the Old and New Testaments, is filled with episodes that, under a new perspective, reveal direct contacts with intelligences of non-earthly origin. Celestial phenomena, glorious apparitions, flying vehicles, resplendent beings, and interdimensional communications are described in detail, but for centuries they have been reduced to spiritual metaphors or abstract theological interpretations. However, when placed side by side with modern accounts of extraterrestrial contact and experiences of expanded states of consciousness, they become clear evidence that the ancient prophets, kings, and mystics interacted with something much greater than mere spiritual visions. They were in contact with stellar intelligences that guided the spiritual evolution of humanity. One of the most enigmatic and impressive accounts is that of Ezekiel in the Old Testament. He describes with almost clinical detail the appearance of a chariot of fire coming from the sky, accompanied by beings with unusual shapes, eyes all over their bodies, wheels spinning within wheels, and a throne that seemed to float above a luminous platform. For a long time, theologians insisted that this was a mystical experience or a symbolic vision of the divine. But today, with knowledge about interdimensional ships and sacred geometries used by extraterrestrial civilizations, it is possible to recognize that Ezekiel was describing advanced technology operating on multiple frequencies. The very concept of wheel within a wheel is similar to modern accounts of ships with concentric electromagnetic fields, and the beings with the appearance of gleaming bronze are consistent with entities of light or visitors with energy armors. Another striking passage is in the book of Exodus, where Moses receives the tablets of the law at the top of Mount Sinai. The text describes the mountain shaking, filling with smoke, lightning, and thunder, and a thick cloud enveloping it for days. This cloud spoke with Moses, emitted sounds, called him inside, and gave him detailed instructions not only on moral conduct, but on architecture, priestly garments, geometries, and even alchemical formulas. Moses spent 40 days inside this presence, and upon returning, his face shone to the point of needing to cover it. In any modern context, this would be classified as contact with a spacecraft of non-earthly origin, with an advanced civilization transmitting data and codes of conduct to restructure a society. The talking cloud, the strange sounds, the manipulation of matter, and the physical transformation of Moses are all signs of deep multidimensional contact. The prophet Elijah also stars in an episode that defies all conventional explanation. He is taken to the heavens in a chariot of fire, drawn by equally flaming horses. There is no death ceremony, just a direct withdrawal by a celestial vehicle in front of the astonished gaze of his disciple Elisha. In Gnostic and apocryphal texts, there are suggestions that Elijah was not the only one to be taken in this way. Enoch, for instance, walked with God and was taken without experiencing death. His book, removed from most canonical versions of the Bible, describes encounters with watchers and a journey through various heavens, where he received deep knowledge about creation, the movements of the stars, the mechanics of the seasons, and the hierarchies of beings of light. This strongly aligns with the accounts of conscious abductions, where beings of high spiritual level transmit information to individuals prepared to receive and share them with humanity. In the New Testament, the episodes become even more intriguing. The very conception of Jesus is preceded by direct contact with a being named Gabriel, who appears enveloped in light, coming from above, with a coded message and a clear mission. Mary does not react with common fear, but with reverence, as if she already knew the presence of these beings. Joseph, later on, receives instructions in dreams, another common form of contact used by beings that operate on subtle frequencies. The birth of Jesus is announced by a star that moves in the sky and stops over the exact place where he was born. This star, according to some esoteric currents, was a light ship guided by superior intelligences, a kind of cosmic signal for those who knew how to interpret the signs of the heavens. During his ministry, Jesus demonstrates full mastery over natural laws. He walks on water, calms storms with words, transforms matter, heals instantly, and transfigures before his disciples. Each of these acts, although revered as miracles, can be interpreted as conscious manipulation of the subtle layers of reality, something reported by more advanced civilizations and documented by numerous spiritual traditions linked to contact with beings from other spheres. The Transfiguration on Mount Tabor, for example, was a moment when his true energetic nature was revealed. His body shone like the sun, his clothes became white as light, and beings from other eras, Moses and Elijah, materialized by his side. This type of manifestation is described in interdimensional encounters where linear time dissolves and parallel realities temporarily intersect for data transmission or vibrational alignment. The Ascension of Jesus also accurately fits the accounts of the departure of celestial beings. After resurrecting in a body of light, he spends 40 days teaching his disciples, appearing and disappearing suddenly, passing through walls and changing shape, clear signs of mastery over the quantum layers of matter. At the end of this period, he is elevated to the heavens, in a cloud, in front of everyone, while two white figures appear and say that he will return in the same way as he left. These two figures can be interpreted as members of the Order of the Star, or star guides who were present to accompany Jesus' final transition out of three-dimensional density. The term cloud, recurring in these episodes, can be understood as a symbolic reference to ships or dimensional portals, often described in modern accounts as enveloped by mists, diffuse lights, or fields of invisibility. In the apocryphal Gospels, such as those of Thomas, Philip, and Mary Magdalene, we find messages that reinforce the idea that Jesus was not just an earthly being with access to the divine, but rather an emissary of higher realities. He speaks of invisible worlds, the nature of the body of light, conscious ascension, and techniques of integration between soul and cosmos. In many of these texts, he is described as someone who knew of his stellar origin, who mastered the mysteries of the universe, and who came to remind humans that they all possess this same cosmic heritage. His words cease to be just moral lessons and become manuals of spiritual activation, aligned with knowledge transmitted by civilizations that had already transcended cycles of pain and forgetfulness. These contacts did not cease after their rise. Various appearances of beings of light have occurred throughout the centuries, often linked to the figure of Jesus, Mary, or angels, but with descriptions that point to beings of non-human origin. In Fatima, for example, the children spoke of a lady who descended from a luminous sphere and communicated telepathically. The movements of the solar cloud, seen by thousands of people, suggest a controlled manifestation of advanced technology. In other cases, such as the mystical encounters of Saint John of the Cross, Teresa of Avila, and Hildegard of Bingen, the reports include lights, heavenly sounds, changes in time, and out-of-body experiences. Signs consistent with interdimensional interactions. The recognition of the stellar presence in the sacred texts does not diminish Christian spirituality, but rather expands it to a cosmic scale. It allows us to understand that the Earth has never been isolated, that human evolution was assisted and guided by intelligences operating at levels far beyond our current understanding. Jesus was the brightest bridge between these worlds, the supreme emissary of the Christ consciousness that manifests through the galaxies to awaken those who sleep. His life, death, and resurrection were not just historical events, but interplanetary milestones, clear signs that human history is deeply intertwined with the cosmic drama of the awakening of the soul. The crucifixion of Jesus, for centuries interpreted as the pinnacle of his human suffering, needs to be reassessed in light of a deeper and cosmic understanding. When considering that Jesus was the physical manifestation of the Christ consciousness, his death cannot be reduced to a merely tragic or political event. In fact, it is a moment of interdimensional alignment, a meticulously planned cosmic activation with repercussions that transcended the physical plane and resonated in energetic layers of the Earth, the solar system, and even realities beyond our perceptible dimension. The cross, then, is not just a symbol of martyrdom, but a sacred geometric device, a point of intersection between the forces of heaven and earth, a central axis where human consciousness was reconnected to the original source. The location and time of the crucifixion were not accidental. Golgotha, the place of the skull, symbolically represents the human mind, the battlefield where the ego and the spirit vie for dominance. By being raised in that place, Jesus became the living anchor of a planetary transmutation process. The moment of his death coincided with specific astronomical alignments, with eclipses and celestial movements that created a vibrational window conducive to the release of light codes stored in his physical body. His biology carried imprinted genetic codes that not only belonged to Earth, but were the fruits of stellar lineages, and each drop of blood shed at that moment served as a transmitter of these frequencies to the planet's energy grid. The cross itself represents the union of the four elements and the four directions, symbolizing the central point of creation, where the spirit descends into matter, and matter is elevated to the spirit. It is the intersection of the horizontal plane of earthly existence with the vertical plane of spiritual transcendence. By being crucified, Jesus positioned his body at the exact center of this cosmic crossroads, making himself a channel between dimensions. The energetic impact of this act was colossal. Streams of light were activated in the Earth's magnetic field, vibrational seals were broken, and ancient matrices of fear and separation began to dissolve. The crucifixion was the epicenter of a planetary reconfiguration, a subtle reprogramming that is still ongoing today. The pain that Jesus experienced, although real, was not the aim of the act. The intensity of the suffering was necessary for him to remain fully present in the physical body while sustaining an extremely high spiritual frequency. He kept his consciousness expanded even amidst the agony, allowing his vibrational presence to continue radiating light to all levels of the planet. While his body was being pierced, his soul remained active on multiple planes, conducting energy work in the etheric fields of humanity. He accessed the collective Akashic records, removing layers of ancestral pain, forgiving not only his tormentors, but all forms of unconsciousness that had accumulated over the millennia of Earth's spiritual separation. At that moment, a portal opened. A vibrational passage was activated in the collective energy field of Earth, directly connecting the physical plane with the higher spheres of Christ consciousness. This portal was not visible to the common eye, but was perceived by sensitives, incarnate masters, and interdimensional beings who were accompanying Jesus' mission. The veil that separated the worlds was torn, both literally and symbolically, as narrated in the Bible, when the veil of the temple was ripped from top to bottom. This tear in the dimensional fabric allowed a new frequency to anchor itself on the planet, the frequency of conscious redemption, of unconditional love, and of absolute unity with everything. This cosmic activation was recorded in multiple dimensions. Stellar civilizations were closely observing the event, as they knew that this moment marked the infusion of Earth with a new matrix of consciousness. Many of these beings, belonging to the Order of the Star, maintained hidden bases in the subtle planes of the Earth, from where they radiated energetic support for the process. Some were physically present, in ships positioned out of human reach, emitting vibrations of harmony and balance to maintain stability in the field around the planet. Others acted through conscious incarnates who vibrated in tune with the mission and participated spiritually in the event, even without fully understanding what they were witnessing. When proclaiming "It is finished," Jesus was not referring to the end of his life, but to the conclusion of a phase of vibrational realignment. He had fully completed his task of serving as a channel for planetary transmutation. At that exact moment, the Christ consciousness, previously concentrated in his physical presence, expanded like a network around the Earth, accessible to all who sought reconnection with their divine essence. The crucifixion, therefore, was the turning point where humanity stopped depending on intermediaries and gained direct access to the light of the cosmos through the awakened heart and pure intention. In the following days, while his body remained in the tomb, Jesus was not inactive. He traversed the lower planes of collective consciousness, confronting the accumulated shadows of humanity, rescuing lost fragments of the collective soul, and anchoring light where before there was only pain and oblivion. This process is described in mystical traditions as the descent into hell, but it is a journey of energetic purification, of karmic cleansing at a collective level. He was not saving isolated individuals, but recalibrating the vibration of the human species, planting seeds that would blossom in the following centuries. The resurrection, in this context, is the crowning of activation. Jesus did not return with the same dense body, but with a body of light, a translucent form that operated on multiple frequencies at the same time. This body is the result of the full fusion between spirit and matter, a model of spiritual evolution that will be accessible to all of humanity throughout its ascension journey. The appearance of Jesus in his glorified body was a demonstration of the next stage of human evolution, the awakening of the body of light, the transcendence of death as a limit, and the return to conscious immortality. The crucifixion as a cosmic activation invites us to reinterpret our own pain, our symbolic deaths, and our moments of greatest darkness. Each suffering can be a gateway to expansion. Each downfall can be a preparation for rebirth. The Christ who was raised on the cross is the mirror of our own journey, from the dark night of the soul to the golden dawn of consciousness. He showed us through his surrender that total submission to the light is the only path to transcend the world of ego, separation, and illusion. The earth since then has never been the same. The crucifixion generated waves of energy that still reverberate today, driving the collective awakening. The seeds planted at that moment are germinating now, in this time of planetary transition. The Christic field is more accessible than ever, and every human being who reconnects with their essence activates a new point of light in the Earth's grid. The crucifixion was the beginning of this process, the first spark of a network that extends across galaxies and that, little by little, reignites humanity's cosmic memory. For centuries, the idea of Christ's second coming has been shrouded in mystery, fear, and literalist expectations. For many, it is about a physical, dramatic return where Jesus descends from the clouds with visible glory, judging the living and the dead, separating the wheat from the chaff. But this narrative, inherited from limited interpretations and shaped by religious structures, obscures a much deeper, spiritual and cosmic understanding of what this event truly represents. The Second Coming is not merely the return of a historical figure, but the collective awakening of the Christ consciousness within humanity, driven by the reapproach of star civilizations that have silently accompanied Earth's journey for millennia. The symbolic language used in the sacred scriptures encodes this greater truth. When one speaks of Christ coming on the clouds, it is not about an empty metaphor or a divine meteorological phenomenon. Clouds are often ancient descriptions of light vehicles, interdimensional ships that appear to human eyes shrouded in mists, flashes, celestial sounds, and electromagnetic manifestations. Just as in the Ascension of Jesus, where a cloud received him, the Second Coming is announced by celestial signs, movements in the skies that transcend natural patterns, planetary alignments, luminous phenomena, all pointing to a vibrational intervention on a cosmic scale. This intervention is not about external domination or salvation, but rather a vibrational collaboration. Advanced stellar civilizations, linked to the Order of the Star and the Galactic Confederation, are reapproaching Earth to assist in the process of planetary transition. These civilizations do not directly interfere in human affairs, as they respect free will as a universal principle, but they act through subtle fields, frequency emissions, telepathic transmissions, energy activations, and conscious contact with prepared individuals. Their return is closely linked to the return of Christ, not as an individual, but as an accessible vibrational field, activated, awakened within the human being. The Second Coming is, in fact, a process. It has already begun. It is the silent awakening that spreads like sacred fire among souls. It is the sudden remembrance that we are more than matter. It is the internal call that urgently echoes, "Remember who you are." It is the heart that cries without knowing why, the body that vibrates on new frequencies, the dreams that reveal scenes from other worlds, of interdimensional meetings, of tasks outside of time. The Christ consciousness is returning not as a man, but as a collective state. Every human being who awakens, meditates, aligns with their inner truth, becomes the very portal of this coming. It is through awakened humanity that Christ manifests again on Earth. And in sync with this process, the Star Brothers, our cosmic ancestors, are gradually returning to our field of perception. They appear in lucid dreams, in deep meditations, in altered states of consciousness, but also begin to discreetly show themselves in the skies. Lights that do not follow natural patterns, flying objects that defy physical laws, channeled messages with wisdom that surpasses any human intellect. All of these are signs of the return of the guardians of universal wisdom, those who, in the distant past, guided the golden civilizations of Earth and now return to support the crossing of this new cycle. These beings do not come as saviors. They do not interfere to solve problems that humanity itself has created, but they inspire, awaken, and reflect the higher reality that we can manifest. They remind us of our stellar origin, the spiritual lineage we carry, the collective mission that brought us here. Many humans, incarnated now, are members of these civilizations who accepted to descend into density to participate in the Great Earth experiment. They are starseeds, galaxy travelers, souls who, out of love, agreed to temporarily forget their origin to assist in the Great Awakening. The return of the star civilizations is also the return of memory, the awakening of the soul to its real identity. The second coming is recorded in the heavens. Since 2012, key dates have marked energy portals that open the veils between worlds. Planetary alignments, solar and lunar eclipses, cosmic conjunctions have acted as triggers to elevate Earth's vibration and prepare human bodies to receive higher frequencies of light. The power structures that operated under fear and control are crumbling. Old systems collapse. The truth begins to emerge. Humanity is stepping, step by step, towards a tipping point, and at this point, the inner Christ and the Brothers of the Stars will fully manifest, not as separate events, but as aspects of the same cosmic realization. The return of Christ and the star civilizations is directly connected to the planetary ascension. Earth, as a living being, is raising its frequency and passing through a photon belt, a zone of high vibrational intensity in galactic space. This process alters the planet's magnetic field, activates dormant energy centers, and accelerates the evolutionary process of collective consciousness. Many feel unexplained physical and emotional symptoms: pain, insomnia, anxiety, memory lapses, appetite changes, as the body is adjusting to a new frequency. This transition was predicted by various ancient cultures, which spoke of the end of a great cycle and the beginning of a new era of light. Christ is the seed of this new humanity. The star beings are the invisible gardeners who help cultivate this sacred flower. The prophecy of the second coming is not an empty promise. It is being fulfilled. It will not come as a spectacle to the eyes, but as a silent revolution of the spirit. It will not be imposed from the outside, but will arise from within. It does not depend on external events, but on inner surrender. With every soul that chooses love over fear, forgiveness over revenge, unity over separation, Christ returns. With every heart that quiets and listens to the voice of the Spirit, the Star Brothers draw closer. With every act of compassion, a star lights up in the firmament of human consciousness. Jesus said that the kingdom of God will not come with outward appearance, but that the kingdom is within you. This was the key revelation. The second coming begins in the heart of each being. The return of Christ does not depend on the opening of the heavens, but on the opening of the heart center. When this portal opens, everything changes. The vision expands, the vibration rises, and communion with celestial beings becomes natural because they too vibrate with unconditional love. They are brothers, mirrors, and guides. They did not come to impose themselves, but to celebrate with us the return to the inner home, the true home, which was never outside, but is always pulsed at the center of our being. The Earth is moving towards reintegrating with the galactic community. The second coming is the sign that we are ready for this step. A new era is approaching. A new human is being born. Not a perfect being, but a conscious one. Not a being who blindly follows, but a being who feels, perceives, and acts from love. This is the promise of Christ. This is the invitation from the stars. And this is the time we live in. The time of return, not only of Jesus, but of our own divine essence. As humanity awakens to broader and subtler realities, it becomes inevitable to recognize that Jesus' true mission was not to create dogmas, religions, or spiritual hierarchies, but to ignite a dormant spark within each human being. He came as a mirror, not as an idol, as a model, not as an exception. The Christ consciousness that pulsed in his essence was not his exclusive property, but a universal frequency, an energy originating from the source, available to all who chose to vibrate in harmony with the truth of being. This consciousness is, in fact, our natural state before forgetting, before the fragmentation of the soul, before the disconnection with the One. And now, in times of planetary transition, this inner call begins to resonate powerfully, summoning each soul to return to its vibrational origin, the inner Christ. Jesus clearly stated, "You are God's. I will make greater works than these happen. The kingdom is within you." These declarations, often overlooked or minimized by dogmatic interpretations, are precious keys that point directly to the activation of the Christ consciousness as the legitimate inheritance of all humanity. He did not come merely to teach high morals, but to reveal the profound workings of the laws of the universe and the soul. Christ, therefore, is not a figure but a vibrational state that, once achieved, completely transforms the perception of reality, the structure of the energy body, and the ability to co-create in harmony with the whole. This consciousness, when activated, does not manifest as a belief, but as a state of being. It is a field of presence, of wholeness, of inner clarity. It is when the individual recognizes themselves as a living part of creation, not separated, but integrated with everything that exists. The Christ consciousness dissolves fears, illusions, domination games. It frees the being from the prison of limited identity, fragmented ego, imposed guilt, and reconnects it to the universal flow of life. In this frequency, love ceases to be a feeling and becomes the very foundation of existence, the cosmic cement that unites everything that is, visible or invisible, physical or ethereal, earthly or stellar. The legacy of Jesus, in this context, is not only spiritual but multidimensional. He left maps, codes, and vibrational seeds scattered through time. Some are in hidden texts, others in sacred monuments, and others still in ley lines and energy points of the planet. But most of these keys are in the human body itself, in the energy centers known as chakras, in the strands of spiritual DNA, in the subtle fields that surround us. By living his life as an incarnation of the Christ consciousness, Jesus showed the return path, the process of inner alchemy by which each being can transmute the lead of ignorance into the gold of lived wisdom. The Star Brothers, with whom Jesus has always been aligned, continue today to assist in activating this consciousness in humanity. They operate through electromagnetic pulses, frequency transmissions, mental projections, and silent activations during sleep or meditation states. More and more people report encounters, visions, vivid dreams with beings of light, ethereal temples, information that emerges without apparent origin, spontaneous unlocking of psychic gifts, and energy healings that cannot be explained by conventional methods. These are unequivocal signs of the reactivation of the planetary Christic network, supported by intergalactic consciousnesses that work in harmony with the divine plan for Earth's ascension. This network is alive, intelligent, and connects millions of beings all over the globe who, in silence or in visible service, vibrate with the pure intention of elevating collective consciousness. Each sincere prayer, each act of compassion, each choice for love over fear, each renunciation of judgment, fuels this luminous mesh that envelops the planet and serves as a channel for the manifestation of the cosmic Christ in physical reality. This mesh is sustained not only by humans, but by star civilizations that have been waiting for ages for the moment when Earth would be ready to reintegrate into the galactic community, not as an apprentice, but as a conscious collaborator. Activating the Christ consciousness is not a task for the few, but the destiny of all. Each soul incarnated at this moment holds within itself the necessary codes for this awakening. It is not necessary to be a saint, nor perfect, nor free from errors. On the contrary, it is in the recognition of one's own shadow, in the profound acceptance of one's own humanity, that the Christ light begins to emerge with greater intensity. The Christ within us is not a prize for the virtuous, but a presence that has always been there, hidden under layers of conditioning, traumas, fears, and forgetfulness. And now, with the help of cosmic energies and the civilizations that accompany us, these layers are being dissolved at an accelerated pace. Jesus' mission did not end on the cross, nor with the resurrection, nor even with the Ascension. His presence continues to live in the subtle fields of the earth, in every cell of those who invoke him with truth, in every heart that seeks to transcend the illusion of separation. His legacy pulses in every silent meditation, in every selfless service, in every compassionate gaze. He walks alongside those who choose the truth, even when it hurts. He guides those who serve the whole, even without recognition, and he manifests with increasing strength in those who dare to say yes to the inner call and accept the journey back to the divine essence. The Christ consciousness is the greatest gift we can claim, and it becomes accessible when we align ourselves with the universal truth of love. This love is not emotional nor dependent. It is a vibrational force that transcends time and space, that dissolves all barriers, that unifies all opposites. It is the love that heals, that expands, that elevates, that transforms. It is the love that moves galaxies, that pulses in suns, that animates worlds, that gave birth to everything that exists. It is this love that Jesus came to remind us of. And it is this love that the Star Brothers also embody and radiate. They are your guardians, your messengers, your mirrors. The awakening of Christ within us is the true purpose of this era. The Ascension will not be an external event, but an internal blossoming, a silent expansion that becomes visible in attitudes, vibrations, choices. The new human, being born now, will be the one who recognizes their cosmic origin, who honors the earth as a sacred temple, who respects all forms of life, who serves with humility, and who lives with full awareness. This being will be the point of union between worlds, the bridge between matter and spirit, the living reflection of the returned Christ, not through the skies, but through the hearts that have opened. The approaching new earth will be built by these beings, and the legacy of Jesus, in collaboration with the Brothers of the Stars, will be the vibrational foundation of this new world. A world where peace will not be a utopia, but a natural vibration, where love will not be the exception, but the basis, where wisdom will not be hidden, but shared, where spirituality will not be dogma, but a living experience, and where each being will recognize the other as part of themselves. In this new reality, Christ will be everything in everyone. And finally, humanity will remember who it truly is. We are on the verge of a revelation that will not just be another page written in human history, but a total rewrite of our understanding about life, the spirit, the universe, and the mission of each soul on this planet. The gospel that has been whispered among deserts and crowds for over 2 millennia, which has been distorted, hidden, reinterpreted, and broken into 1,000 pieces by various interests, is resurfacing. Not as a new book, but as a living vibration pulsing within those who are awakening. This is the new revelation, a cosmic gospel that speaks not only of what was, but of what is and what will be. A direct call to human consciousness to abandon the illusion of separation, of insignificance, of fear, and to firmly return to the memory of its divine and cosmic origin. This new gospel will not come from institutions. It will not be canonized, nor translated into dogmas or behavioral norms. It is already inscribed in the heart of every human being. It is the remembrance that emerges silently during deep meditation, the chill that runs through the body when hearing an undeniable truth, the tear that flows without apparent reason when a soul recognizes another. It is a living, holographic, fractal revelation, a truth that cannot be grasped with words, but only lived, embodied, and shared by resonance. This gospel is the breath of the Spirit that crosses time to activate what we already knew, but forgot. It reveals to us that the kingdom of heaven is not distant, but present, here and now, accessible through the portal of the heart. In this new era, Christ ceases to be a figure and becomes a presence. He manifests himself in small gestures, in conscious choices, in the courage to follow intuition in a world still dominated by noise. The cosmic gospel is not a new religion, but the overcoming of all religions. It invites us to look beyond temples, rituals, intermediaries, and rediscover the spark that silently pulses within each atom. It reminds us that the body is the true temple, that earth is the altar, and that life is the greatest of sacraments. There is no longer a need to seek truth outside, because it has never left the inside. The teachings of Jesus, when understood under this new light, become cosmic navigation maps. Each parable, each gesture, each silence was an energetic transmission. Forgiveness, for example, is not just a moral act, but a vibrational release that dissolves the ties of time. Loving your neighbor is not just ethics, but the recognition of the quantum oneness that connects all beings. Faith, more than belief, is the frequency of alignment with the creative field. When he said we were the light of the world, he was not speaking poetically, but literally. We are made of the same substance as the stars, animated by a consciousness that vibrates beyond duality. The new revelation also reveals that the angels who so often visited the prophets, patriarchs, kings, and mystics were not just mythological winged beings, but in many cases, visitors from higher planes, members of the star civilizations that have been following the fate of the Earth since its origins. These beings, belonging to the Galactic Federation, the Order of the Star, the Councils of Light, and the higher archetypes of unconditional love, are now closer to our vibrational field. The ascension of the Earth is allowing this reapproach. The veil between the worlds is becoming increasingly thin, and the cosmic gospel naturally and inevitably begins to include the presence of our brothers from the stars. They bring memories that we have forgotten. They are living libraries, carrying records from when the Earth was young, when the oceans still sang under crystal-clear skies, and humans walked in full awareness of their origin. They remember when ancient civilizations danced with cosmic cycles, when altars were aligned with constellations, and spirituality was not belief, but sacred science. This memory is part of the cosmic gospel. It is returning to remind us that we are not orphans of the universe, but beloved children of creation, part of an extensive, kind, and actively involved stellar family in the blossoming of earthly consciousness. This new gospel also reveals that the pain we experience as humanity, wars, abuses, poverty, ignorance, is the result of forgetting, of disconnecting from the source. But it does not condemn us. It offers us tools to reintegrate the self, to heal the wounds accumulated over millennia, to transmute guilt into wisdom and downfall into rebirth. It teaches that ascension is not escape, but full presence, that being spiritual is not rejecting the world, but illuminating it with awakened consciousness, that living with Christ within is not becoming superior, but more compassionate, more humble, more complete. In this renewed gospel, Earth is seen as a living, sacred organism with its own cosmic purpose. It is not a testing ground, but a womb of gestating souls. And now, at the end of one cosmic cycle and the beginning of another, it prepares to give birth to a new humanity. The labor has already begun. The contractions are felt in the crumbling systems, in the emerging internal conflicts, in the intensifying emotional illnesses, in the deep questions that can no longer be ignored. But what is coming is new, it is beautiful, it is divine, it is Christ reborn, not in a cave or cross, but in millions of hearts. The cosmic gospel is the revelation that everything is connected, that Jesus was a stellar emissary, a soul teacher, a sower of galaxies, that his teachings are compatible with quantum physics, with sacred geometry, with the principles of interdimensional creation, that the cross was an antenna, the resurrection a quantum leap, and the ascension a conscious reintegration to the whole. He showed us the way. Now, it's up to us to walk it, not as followers, but as co-creators, not as passive disciples, but as awakened beings, fully aware of their cosmic and divine nature. We have arrived at the threshold of a new humanity, a humanity that sees beyond borders, that unites by resonance and not by imposition, that honors all forms of life and recognizes the Christ in every being, a humanity that reconciles with its stellar roots, that frees itself from the illusion of separation, that understands that evolution is not linear but spiral, a humanity that finally becomes mature, free, sovereign, and luminous. This is the true gospel that Jesus came to announce, and that now, Finally, we are ready to live. Not in words, but in vibration. Not in promises, but in presence. This is the so-called end, that each one becomes the gospel. That every breath, word, gesture, and choice are expressions of the incarnate Christ consciousness. That every step is taken with purpose, every silence is fertile, every action is guided by truth. May the earth transform into a living temple, and when we look up to the sky, we recognize not just stars, but distant homes that loved us, even when we forgot who we were. The new revelation is now. The time has come. Humanity awakens, and Christ lives in us, for us, as us, forever. And now I want to hear from you, awakened soul of minds unfettered. If the cosmic gospel of Christ truly is an interdimensional code left to reignite our consciousness, which part of this revelation touched you the most today? Comment below with your vision, your insight, your memory. Because when we share our perceptions, we create a network of conscious manifestation. Each of your words vibrates. Each of your reflections expands the field. Let's manifest this new consciousness on Earth together. And if you felt the deep call of this journey, don't stop here. The next step is even more revealing. Tap now on the video that appears on your screen. The Book of 33 Steps, the hidden map Jesus left for enlightenment. There we will decipher the secret map that Christ himself left for enlightenment, a path hidden in symbols, words, and energy, waiting for the right moment to be understood. See you there, free mind. We are minds unfettered, and the journey is just beginning.